Hi guys, this video is really for people who are into New Age and into mythology. I'm basically going to be talking about um, things that will help people to interpret the Bible in such a way that they will be able to uh, basically become a New Ager or understand a New Age way of looking at the Bible. And like, people don't really understand how much like time I put into some of this study. That's like why I haven't made that many videos recently. Is I have been reading and watching video teachings and stuff. But yeah, I'll just get it into it. So the title for this will be myth, sin, faith, um, and conditional love in traditional um, Christianity. And basically, I'll make a request at the beginning of this video, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll understand why I made that request. So this is the request: is to please sacrifice your religion for love by becoming a mythologist. And so that's part of a syncretist agenda. But anyway, so point one I wanted to make was, well, first of all, I want to help people get into the New Age. So here is a Bible verse that talks about obtaining that age, right? So this is from a mythological perspective. This is like attaining to the enlightened consciousness in the next heaven and earth. And so this is Luke 20:35, and the rising again, that is out of the dead. So it's a state of deadness. And then it talks about they'll neither marry nor being given in marriage. This is a parable for unity. So they're not going to be divided anymore, but we're going to be united. And that's the highest state of consciousness, is the universal consciousness. But yeah, that was just to show you that it was going to be talking about the New Age, and this is in the Bible. And now I'm just going to go through my points. So point one is traditional Christianity contains conditional love because of the doctrine of the last judgment. And a lot of people are afraid of the last judgment and what God might say to them on Judgment Day. And this is sometimes a subconscious phobia, right? The subconscious is what you don't know that you don't know. And so people put stuff that they're afraid of underneath this category of, oh, we'll have faith for God in that. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Right? Because people are afraid of the last judgment, and for example, partial preterists won't become full preterists in their eschatology because they want to hold on to this idea of a future judgment day. And eschatology is the study of the last things, or the end times. And there's 4 different views of eschatology, generally speaking, in literalist Christianity. Now, I've gone through those, and I've now seen that the Bible is more metaphorical than I thought it was. That is something that takes a lot of time to understand. So anyway, point 2, so this is versus the mythological view would be a more, and this actually includes the universalist views, which are highly advanced studies. These views have unconditional love, right? Because the last judgment day is understood in a different light. So what is the last judgment in universalism or in the mythological view? Well, the last judgment is actually takes place at a place and time within a cosmic cycle, right? The last judgment day is the fulfillment or the completion of a cycle on the zodiac, and that is when these celestial elements, they're finally basically it's the end of the old covenant. And the old covenant is a covenant of night, or a moon covenant, right? Whoever sins, sins at night. So you should be children of day, right? This is in Thessalonians. And basically, this is because of the interpretations through the polarities, right? There's up and there's down. If you split the zodiac in half, there's the summer months and the winter months. There's light and there's dark. You get the yin and the yang. And therefore hell is the winter months, and therefore Jesus says, pray that I do not come in winter, because he is the sun god. And so hell is a sort of pruning of the fruit of the spirit. Hell is with sulfur, and sulfur is a purifier 2,000 years ago. So in traditional Christianity, the Last Judgment is actually an old covenant doctrine, eschatologically speaking. So if you actually look at the time statements and do in-depth study of the time statements in the Bible, you discover that the Last Judgment is actually the Last Judgment of Old Covenant Israel, and that's actually it is the 40-year period between AD 30 and 70, because it's the second Exodus. So that's the transition period from the Old Covenant to the New Covenant, or from Egypt to the Promised Land. So this is the same story repeated again and again. So in mythology, in the sense of unconditional, your interpretation of the Bible can also become unconditional, right? But you have to have that framework before you can basically play with ideas in the Bible, and you can think creatively with the Bible. And that's where authenticity in psychology comes into it. You're actually going to be a healthier person from a psychological perspective when you know some of these things I'm telling you, because then you can have one foot in what you do know and one foot in what you don't know. And you don't have to judge every thought or police every thought because of a future Last Judgment Day. Your interpretation of the Bible can also become unconditional once you are freed by love from the judgment towards yourself. So I want you to get that. Right? So self-love basically equals enlightenment. And when you show love towards yourself, a part of that is letting go of this fear of a Last Judgment Day, which is just an objective idea in your subjective mind that you are using to judge yourself. And to be free from that, you actually have to believe that God really loves you. Like, it has to be so strong that you are free from this idea that you're condemned. So this is why, like, the old covenant was a covenant of condemnation, and the new covenant is not. And what a lot of traditional Christians are doing is they're interpreting the new covenant through the lens of the old covenant texts, right? The new covenant doesn't actually begin till after the end of the Bible is written. And the book of Revelation is this new covenant canon that brings you into that new understanding. That's right. So this is from the mythological perspective, and I'm interpreting it through modern psychology and modern emotional psychology, and basically the zodiac and the cycles of the zodiac. And that is the law of God, right? When you compare it to, like, Enoch. Anyway, I'm getting off on a rabbit trail, but the next point, this freedom is the true law of Christ in the mythological perspective. Right? And that's mentioned in 1 Corinthians, where it talks about the law of Moses versus the law of Christ. A lot of people do not feel safe with the idea that you can interpret the Bible the way you want to. And I wanted to address that, because if you don't feel safe with the idea that, you can interpret the Bible subjectively because it has all these contradictions, you're not actually free to think creatively about reality, about you're not free to be authentic. You're not free to be yourself. Therefore, people around you can't love you for you. They're actually loving the veil, the old covenant veil, which is this mindset that you're going to be judged one day, which is a form of self-hatred. And that's why the old covenant is called a kingdom divided against itself, and it shall not stand. And that's the law of the letter that's teaching you that, not the law of the spirit. So that's why a lot of New Age people who say, well, I discovered that God is love by looking within myself. Well, that's what the Bible's trying to tell us through the new covenant. But unless we discern it through reality and those things, we're not going to see like some of the stuff that was maybe forged, or we're not going to understand the metaphors of what I'm trying to get across here. Okay. Next point. So that was about safety. This safety is related to faith. So this is you can actually it helps you understand what faith means when you look at how safe people are, because this goes back to basically the only way Jesus says in the Gospels to interpret false prophets, which is by their fruit. And what is the fruit of the Spirit? It's peace, joy, and love, or those things. Those are states of being. And if somebody's worried about the Last Judgment and has an agenda to save you, right? This is why evangelicalism is false. Because by the nature of trying to get you saved, they're not actually living by faith, because they're making it their responsibility, and they're not making it a divine nature thing, right? So it's not a natural thing especially for introverts, to all of a sudden become extroverted and try to convert people. So this is really about getting back to what's actually natural and removing that lens of, oh, I have to do this or that, or be a slave to something, right? So I'm just trying to get back to the pure nature of things. And that's what I think mythologists do best. Or what I feel freer to do it that way, through a mythological perspective, because the traditional beliefs usually have a set of things you have to believe to go to their church organization. And that's where I'm like, people, well, what if I disagreed with that? I no longer feel like I can fit in with this church group. And that's what's sad to me. And because people aren't actually free to be themselves where they're at their stage on their journey. So if someone has true faith, they will feel safe. Why? Because faith is not believing Christ died or rose from the dead. Faith is in love itself. That's like, and then you go back to 1 John, is faith is in love. So Jesus, he didn't say he was a human historical person. He just said, I am the truth. I am the way, which is a reference to the zodiac or the ecliptic. And he says, I am the life, which is the principle of being alive. And those are pure principles. And especially if you start to interpret the Bible through I am the truth. But if someone says they have faith, then, well, you don't actually need them to say they have faith, because all you have to do is, okay, are they at peace? And are they free to let you think for yourself? Right, this goes back to like cults and mind control. But I just want you to know, like, if that God is still love in the afterlife, right? This is my next point. Because a lot of times we put under the category of faith things that happen after we die. And we kind of forget, well, God is still love and he still works after we die. So he's not going to stand there crying while everybody or most of humanity is burning in hell, right? If God is still love, then he's not going to do that. He's going to do something about that. And that would be easy for him. He'd be like, come on in. right? So then what is hell actually, right? You have to replace that idea with something. Hell is actually a state of consciousness that assumes God is not love, right? So I want to say that again. Hell is the state of consciousness that assumes that God is not love. Because it's like if we're here, we're in this reality, and we're gonna die. If you think about like the meaning of life, well, the obvious thing to do is to try to reduce the tragedy in life. So what's the best way to do that? It's to believe basically that it's to not resist life, it's to accept life. And therefore, you're accepting that the God is life. And God is a word for the authority that of life. And like I believe we all chose to be here actually. And that the meaning we're here is to be basically raise our self-awareness and to love ourselves. So if we start to believe things in our reality that we're creating, that God is not love, then we've created that resistance energy which will manifest the reality that God isn't love, and our life will align with that. And that's where we get into the law of attraction. So hell is the state of consciousness that assumes God is not love, and you create your own reality. to especially when it comes to these metaphysical principles, these ideas about what's right and wrong, those are basically what you desire to believe. And we're learning this in modern psychology, that people usually they follow their feelings and they try to justify the way that they feel about something. And that's what I see in myself, that's what I see in others. And so the question is, okay, what are you actually safe to explore? Do you feel safe reading a book that you might disagree with, but you're exploring something new? Right, so a part of my personality type is I want to be authentic, and I want to explore, and I store things in my memory. And I'm an introverted, so I'm exploring those ideas. So I might be more vulnerable to a cult, but almost also be likely to come out of that cult. So that's how you can start to interpret like the Bible. That's how you can actually have a lot more peace. And that is how you can come into like the New Age movement. So to me, the truth has been flipped upside down in the last like 5 years. And because I've been studying all these things. And so yeah, this was basically just my journal entry for tonight. I hope you guys liked it. Comment, subscribe. Have a good night.